One of the things that get asked very often is the assessments with regards to the property. Jeff, can you talk about when people bring up assessments with Cape Coral properties, what do they mean by that?
Well, when they begin to run water and sewer and then irrigation as well, sometimes there's assessments. Now, there's an upside and a downside. The downside is you are going to have assessments. They amortize them over 20 years and put them on the tax bill.
And to be clear, when we're saying assessments, we're saying the city of Cape Coral is going to give you a fee to then pay back having water access to your property. That's both sewer and drinking water.
Yeah, and they amortize it over 20 years on a tax bill, basically. So the downside is you have that. Another downside, when they run it, they tear up the roads. You basically stop washing your car for about a month. You're not going to keep it clean. Now here's the upside. Now, if you built before that, you've got a septic tank and a well. While your water, you don't have a water bill, you still have to maintain it. You still have to have a softener. When a septic tank has a problem, it tends to be expensive. I mean, you may get lucky and just have to have a clean out, $350. But if you have an issue with your septic tank, it becomes a very expensive issue, particularly if it's an older home. So you kind of have a floor now that when you're hooked up to city water and city sewer, if something bad happens, it's not nearly as expensive. So we have landlords in the Southwest Florida REIA that won't buy a rental property that's on a well or a septic tank, just because if the septic tank goes bad and they have to replace it, you're about $9,500 right now for a new septic tank. So that pretty much eats up the whole year's worth of rent in some cases, much alone the, it definitely eats up a couple of years worth of positive cash flow. But so they also have irrigation that comes in as well. So, and there's I think it's capeims.com. If you go to the Lee County Property Appraiser site, there's a link to check Cape Coral fees. So say you're looking at a house or say you're looking at a lot, you can just search that address and hit the button run loan payoff, and it'll give you a guesstimate on what the assessments are. Because that's one of our primary things. We have a partnership where we buy and sell 10 to 30 lots a month. And that's our first underwrite on a Cape Coral asset, a Cape Coral lot particularly, is, how much in assessments does it have? But it's not the end of the world. It's going to range. There's two things in real estate. There's the cost to acquire it, and then there's the cost to keep it. It's going to raise your cost to keep, but particularly, here's an investment opportunity. Initially, when the assessments show up, and it's all done in areas, there's like North 1, North 2, North 3, SWFL 5 and 6.
And it's worth mentioning that basically everything south of Pine Island Road has already been built out. Right now, we're talking about the area just north of Pine Island Road. And then even beyond that, that's going to be maybe 6 or 7 years before that even comes into the picture.
Yeah. But the assessments aren't the end of the world, but you need to know about them. But I mean, just an interesting opportunity I've watched happen time and time again. When they run a fresh batch of assessments, a lot of landowners panic and blow their lots out. And you think about it, if you're a builder, you've got an area with water and sewer. So, right now, if you build a house with a septic tank, you have to get a permit from the health department, and that takes a little bit, 6 weeks. So if you're hooking up the water and sewer, it's easier to build, it's cheaper to build, and you have cheap land. So builders love those areas. And usually if you watch statistically, they will take a hit the first year, and within the second year, they're back to where they started or above it. So,
and that brings up a good point, where if there's a property that's maybe valued at 220 or so, when the assessments are due, when the construction begins, they're likely to sell for up to 180 just because of the fear. And it might just be a 6-month period of time, but during that time period, there's going to be a lot of panic, in which it can be an opportunity to buy a property that is currently undervalued. It may only cost you maybe $16,000 or so over the next, you said 15 to 20 years?
20 years.
Right. So it really becomes something that you just work into your equation, but that fear, that panic does present a buying opportunity. Is that correct?
It can. I have personally made money off of it. I will share that.
And you are an experienced investor. So if you are someone who's looking to become an experienced investor, it makes sense to see what others are doing and possibly follow suit.